3, 2, 1. Hello guys, GatorGamer CHOMPING to another video of Top 10 Creepiest Pastas Ever Told.
With me.
With my cousin joining me. And she has a channel of her own, by the way.
I forgot its name. I forgot my new channel's name. It's called Rocket_Keep, but like Rocket has a space in between the underscores. So yeah. And then it just has a Gotcha Life character as a
Sooner or later, I might give her a shout out. So go on ahead and check it out when you can. And let's start reacting. Say that, and you play the vid.
I hope you're ready for some more bedtime stories, because Uncle Matt is back. Here are the 10 freakiest creepypastas ever told. Number 1 is us.Thx. Years ago, a bizarre cartoon of Mickey Mouse surfaced that was thought to have been lost from the 1930s. Entitled Suicide Mouse.avi, the 9-minute clip shows Mickey Mouse walking along a looped city background with a worried expression on his face. After fading to black, Mickey Mouse appears again, still walking, but now with a twisted grin on his face, accompanied by a woman screaming. The clip then abruptly cuts to Mickey Mouse's face with a broken music box playing in the background, which lasts for about 30 seconds. However, what's disturbing is that nobody knows exactly what was shown in the original last 30 seconds of that clip. But it's said that an original Disney employee named Leonard Maltin was so distraught upon seeing this final clip that he walked out of the room upon seeing it and promptly shot himself in the head. The clip is on YouTube right now, if you're brave enough to watch it. Number 2 is The Grifter. The Grifter is a video floating around the deep web that was first mentioned somewhere on 4chan/X image board. The video is said to contain brutal imagery, which has a diabolical effect on the viewer. It's said to contain experimental footage from dead or dying infants, intercut with tracking shots from an unknown location, creepy dolls, among other bizarre visuals. It's said to cause irreversible depression, which has caused some to go insane and even commit suicide. The video is out there, but this is not one that I recommend that you search. Number 3 is The Story of Lisa. This is the story of a little girl who had an imaginary friend named Lisa. The little girl liked to draw and would frequently document her days in crude drawings. Over time, the girl's obsession with Lisa grew, and she even brought Lisa to school one day for show and tell. That day, her teacher, Miss Monroe, wasn't able to see Lisa and got angry. Just a few days later, Miss Monroe didn't make it to school and never came back. The days then passed, and the little girl would stay up late with Lisa, which angered her father, who later claimed that Lisa was stupid and fake. Shortly after, her father disappeared. It wasn't until later that her mother discovered a drawing of Lisa, explaining that both her teacher and her father were sleeping underneath the sandbox and would never be coming back. Each drawing documented exactly what was happening before it happened. Number 4 is The Queen's Guard. In 2012, a member of the Queen's Guard working at the Tower of London noticed a pale woman staring back at him while he was on duty. She seemed to follow him around for several days, constantly counting down the numbers. 10, 9, 8. A week later, the man heard a knock on his apartment door, which woke him up at 3 a.m. Allowing his girlfriend to sleep, he answered the door himself, only to find his girlfriend standing on the other side of the door. Rushing back to his room in a terrified panic, he discovered in place of his girlfriend was the pale woman, in the corner counting down. 7, 6, 5. Running out, the man then called the police, but by the time they arrived, she was gone, his girlfriend right back where she started. The very next day, the woman appeared again at the man's post, again counting down. 4, 3, 2. Shortly after, that night, his niece Ashley visited him. When he checked outside on his young niece, who was playing in the yard, he saw the same woman, this time bent over, gripping the girl and repeating 0, 0, 0. This time the police came and managed to arrest the woman, who had no identification and never spoke again. The nightmare finally appeared to be over. That was until the next day when his niece left, and upon boarding the train, he heard her whisper to him, 10, 9, 8. Number 5 is Lavender Town Syndrome. Shortly after the release of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan, is Lavender Town Syndrome. Shortly after the release of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan in 1996, there was a sharp rise in suicides in children between the ages of 7 and 12. Parents and authorities began noticing that these children had played the game and reached an area called Lavender Town. It's said that the music played in that area had such a high frequency only young children could hear it. This caused over 200 children to take their own lives by either hanging themselves or jumping from high places. Now today, of course, the music sounds completely different and is played at a lower frequency to avoid children being affected by it the same way. However, the original clip from the game is on YouTube right now. You can have a listen for yourself. Number 6 is The Bad Dream. A man woke up at 3:23 in the morning to find his young daughter at the side of his bed, afraid, telling him, "Daddy, I had a bad dream." Wanting to console his daughter, he asked her if she wanted to climb into bed and talk about it, but she oddly refused. Noticing his daughter's pale form in the darkness of the bedroom, he asked why. She then replied, "Because in my dream, when I told you about it, the thing wearing mommy's skin sat up." It was at that moment that the covers beside the man began to shift. Number 7 is The Smiling Man. Sometime in the early 2000s, a man moved to a new neighborhood and would often go for long walks by himself to think. It was peaceful, but all of that changed on one night. One Wednesday night while walking, he noticed the silhouette of a man dancing, coming straight towards him. The man was tall and lanky, wearing what appeared to be an old suit. His eyes were open wide and wild, his head tilted back slightly, looking up at the sky. But what was most disturbing about the man was his mouth, which was formed into a painfully wide, almost cartoon-like smile. Upon noticing this, the smiling man suddenly crouched and began moving fast towards the man with an inhuman speed. Almost directly in front of him, the man, terrified, asked, "What do you want?" At that point, the man ran off to avoid the smiling creature. The man became petrified and could no longer go outside, deciding to end his long walks. A few nights later, when he was finally able to start actually falling asleep, he heard a voice from beneath the bed. "Keep smiling." Number 8 is The Basement. A young man was trying to save up for his upcoming wedding, so he decided to move into his sister's old room in the basement of his deceased parents' house. After sensing an unknown presence entering his room night after night, he decided to start closing his bedroom door. This continued for some time. That was until one night when the man decided to confront his unknown fear. When he finally gazed upon the form at the foot of his bed, it was his deceased mother crouching close to the ground, staring at him, looking up with a smile. The man, terrified, immediately moved out and decided to get a shotgun wedding. Days later, visibly shaken but now happy that he's finally married, he decided to read the cards from his guests. Within them, he found a note from his mother which read, "I'll always be with you." That night, upon falling asleep in his new house, the last thing he saw before closing his eyes were his mother's dead, lifeless eyes staring at him from the closet of his new bedroom. Number 9 is Annie96 is typing. One night, two friends Annie and Dave were chatting online. Annie96 suddenly sent a message to her friend McDavie that she could hear footsteps on the gravel outside her house. Being alone in the house with her parents out of town, she decided to investigate and spotted a man on his hands and knees in her garden. She immediately messaged Davie telling him to quit trying to scare her, as he knew she was the only one that knew she was alone. That's when Davie sent her a message saying to hide and call the police immediately, along with a geolocation saying that he was at his house. She immediately hid in the closet and could hear a man enter her home. Annie begged Davie for help when suddenly Annie's texts completely changed. She began messaging Davie saying everything was fine and that she was happy and without worry or fear. Davie, terrified, asked her to send him a selfie to ensure that she was okay. All that Davie saw at that point was Annie96's typing, and suddenly she went offline. Number 10 is Mariana Mordegard Glesgor. In April 2008, a 20-second long video titled Mariana Mordegard Glesgor began circulating on YouTube. Interestingly, if you search for this video, you will find a 20-second video of a man staring intently at you, expressionless, and then grinning for the last 2 seconds. But this is only part of the actual original video. The videos currently on YouTube are simply a looped version of that 20 seconds. However, the full video lasts for 2 full minutes and was was removed by YouTube after 153 people who viewed the original video gouged their eyes out and committed suicide in various ways. The disturbing sounds in the background can still be heard and are said to include mind-twisting messages that affect people in different ways. Versions of this video are on YouTube right now. But I warn you, search for it at your own despair. So those were the 10 freakiest creepypastas of all time.
Thank you, Matthew.
Part 3.
On to the next.
I don't want to watch any Mickey Mouse of all people. Like the Mickey Mouse one scared me.
There was a thing that says that Bendy was out before Mickey, but I never seen it as a cartoon. It's that a pretend cartoon being supposed in a game, but who knows? It could be true. It can no longer be expressed as a cartoon, just a game now. Who knows? But
can someone make this into a creepypasta in the comments? Just like make a creepypasta about this bear. Like I could see how it could be kind of creepy.
Bear or bread?
Creepypastas are enough to keep many of you up at night. But the events described in these tales have gone far beyond just campfire stories for the digital age. Many people claim that their encounters in these stories are real events. Events that make some lose sleep and others go...
Yeah, I'm a teenager. This ain't gonna affect nothing.
I'm just saying,
completely insane.
I can watch a scary movie and just like sleep perfectly fine after that.
Here are the 10 freakiest creepypastas ever.
Hold up. Take 5. I need... Okay. We've had it load, so it'll continue on playing.
Number 10 is sonic.exe.
This is too simple.
A man named Tom received a Sonic the Hedgehog video game in the mail from a friend of his named Kyle. Kyle warned him that it was in his best interest not to boot it up and that he should destroy it immediately. As a huge Sonic fan, Tom ignored the warning and launched the video.
Really?
Why would someone send a Sonic fan a game and tell them to not boot it up?
And I didn't know that Sonic EXE was actually like a creepypasta kind. I thought it was just made up fan fiction of some kind.
He is a creepypasta, but you know not all creepypastas are real, right?
None of them are real to me.
Well, I mean... Sorry, we're back.
As a huge
we're
Sonic
back.
fan, Tom ignored the warning and launched the video game. Thinking that it was just a modified version of the game, he soon noticed something was very wrong. Sonic's eyes were now black with red irises, and he had blood dripping from them. The background and atmosphere of the game had lots of gore as well as dead animals everywhere. Sonic also kept killing other characters while saying, "I am God." No matter what happened, the player's character always died and he had to restart. Tom actually tried at one point to throw out the game, but was haunted by his own bleeding Sonic plushie. Number 9 is the Weeping Angel.
Weeping Angel? That reminds me of Ghost Rider.
Similar to the villains in the television show Doctor
And Medusa.
Who, stone statues can be unsettlingly realistic. While trying to find the...
I'm glad that we paused on such a nice picture.
Doctor Who, stone statues can be
The thing keeps unloading. Sorry.
While trying to find the...
Pause it.
Expecting their first child toured a house with some weird angel statues in the garden.
Take 5.
As they move...
It's already going!
Don't trust it. It's just gonna stop and it's just gonna annoy us.
House with some weird angel statues in the garden. As they moved about, the statues seemed to be in different positions each time that they looked at them. Nervous, they rejected that potential home and moved on to another, only to find similar statues to the first house that they looked at. Becoming suspicious, the husband noticed that the agent had vanished and tried...
Okay, so the thing would just keep doing that, but except It's probably going to play in just a few seconds, so let's just wait one more time before we start.
So make her creepypasta bread bear right now.
To escape the house with his
there
wife.
it is.
He tried calling the agent, but there was no response. As they ran down the street, they realized that the angels were actually chasing them. Since then, the only thing that existed of the couple was a single police report that read that the couple ended up dead.
Number 8.
8 is Squidward's suicide.
Squidward's suicide.
Told by a former intern at Nickelodeon Studios, this creepypasta tells the story of an unaired episode of SpongeBob SquarePants that the intern had found. Instead of a kid's cartoon show, he and the crew with
An ad. Are you kidding me? An ad?
featuring the
Unsettling
character
episode.
Squidward. For some unknown reason, everyone in the episode seemed to have red, realistic-looking eyes. It soon cuts to Squidward sitting on a bedside, crying over a failed concert that he had to put on. So overwhelmed by this, along with the terrible negative feedback that he had received, he then takes his own life with a shotgun, in full gory detail. Then, a single still frame of a dead child mangled on the road is shown. Adding to the horror, a faint voice is cut into the animation, and the sound of someone laughing can be heard.
Number 7.
Number 7 is Pen Pal.
Pen Pal.
Pen
Word
Pal
sounds
is a
familiar.
series of tales about a kindergarten
Probably like
student
PayPal.
who releases a balloon with a
What is
letter
that?
asking for a reply,
I heard
an
Pen Pal, but
activity
not
he
PayPal, whatever that
participated
is.
in with the rest of his class. But as other kids' letters came back from the people who found theirs,
Everybody can only
the
see your eye.
narrator noticed that his fails to return. That is, until one day his teacher hands him a letter that begins a chain of unsettling events. It turns out that the boy's letter was found by a creepy man who proceeds to stalk him mercilessly, even living in a crawl space under the narrator's house for a while. Years later, the stalker kidnaps Josh, the boy's best friend, dyes Josh's hair the same color as the narrator's, and then kills Josh's sister. He then manipulates Josh's dad into unknowingly burying both the stalker and Josh so that they can be together forever.
Number 6.
Number 6 is Psychosis.
Psychosis.
Psychosis tells the story of John, a man who becomes increasingly
Stop that, ain't gonna
paranoid
help.
due to a lack of physically seeing another person for a long time. He tries to convince his friends to come over and visit. However, everyone seems to either decline or go offline. He eventually gets a video call from a friend, but something seems off. He begins to believe that the electronics
their
in
friend.
his life are being controlled by something called the entity, which can take them over whenever it wants. He also believes everyone who communicates
That
with
looks
him
like
is
Flowey's
lying
ultimate form.
in an attempt to get him to leave his apartment and become possessed like they are, because the entity can also take over people through their eyes. In a desperate move to
Don't
stop
look
the
into
entity
the
from
eyes.
taking him, John blinds himself. In the end, we learn that the entity is in fact real and has taken over the doctor who is in fact seeing him.
Number 5.
Number 5 is Ted the Caver.
Ted the Caver.
Written as journal entries, Ted the Caver tells of a man named Ted who finds a cave with a small passage that he can't get through. He decides to widen the passage so that he can explore it, and spends several days with a friend using hammers to widen the hole just enough to enter it. Eventually, they make their way into the cave. However, the deeper that they get into the tunnel, the more things get eerie, and strange noises and feelings haunt them. One of the men even finds a strange symbol, claiming that it resembles something from the Blair Witch Project. Soon after, they encounter what's believed to be some sort of unknown creature that tries to attack them. Abandoning the cave, the eerie feeling seems to follow Ted home, and he later decides that he has to go back to the cave to conquer it. That was his last entry. Number 4 are the portraits.
Portraits.
After spending the day
Portraits.
hunting in a massive
Portraits?
forest, a hunter realizes that he's lost track of time, and it's quickly getting dark out. Not knowing which path will get him home safely, and large foliage making it difficult to navigate, he searches around until he finds a cabin in a small clearing with the door open. After looking in it, he decides to spend the night there and explain himself to the owner later. The hunter enters a room and sits on a bed, only to find several incredibly detailed portraits of people with their faces twisted into expressions of hatred and malice hanging on the wall, all of which seem to be staring directly at him. Ignoring them, he falls asleep, but when he wakes up, there's sunlight beaming in, and he finds that there are no paintings, only windows. Number 3 is You'll Never Even Know.
You'll never even know. What is...
After hearing his neighbor bragging about how perfect their new smart home security system is, a young college student hacks into it and becomes able to see much of their house through the installed cameras. However, he ends up seeing much more than he bargained for when a basement camera captures a gray humanoid blob that moves about the house, causing mischief like a curse and haunting the family that lives there. Though the boy can see it, the people physically present never quite seem to, always being in a different room or asleep when it's present. He tries to bring attention to it, but ends up attracting the ghostly figure's attention instead. The boy then realizes the entity only appeared to him when the system was integrated with his own, and begins to disconnect himself from the technology. However, although he attempts to ignore what he witnessed, the humanoid figure begins haunting him.
Number 4.
Number 2 is the dream of every dentist.
Dream of every dentist? But that's gonna be weird.
10 dentists participate in a meeting organized by a man in black.
What?
And are told
10?
that if they tell the man running it...
Stupid loading. Hold on a moment.
Dream, that they get $5,000 each. At first, they're very hesitant, explaining that he won't understand even if they told him about the dream. The dream, that they get $5,000.
Wait, did I do that at the same time?
At first, they're very hesitant,
my camera.
explaining that he won't understand, and explaining that they all had the same dream about weaving a needle and thread through a human's head, but get frustrated when it always ends up inside due to there being 7 holes, the 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, and 1 mouth. To their delight, the man reveals his stenographer, who had been there recording the whole conversation, has no mouth. The dentists are delighted and relieved to see that there are only 6 holes now. However, that's when the man takes out a real needle and thread and says, "Let's see if it works." And number 1 is bedtime.
Sounds lame.
Soon after his older brother switches rooms, an 8-year-old boy has a room of his very own. Unfortunately, he also gets an unexpected invisible roommate. Sleeping on the top bunk, the boy often wakes up to the sound of the creature on the lower bunk, thrashing about as if having a tantrum. When he tells his parents about this, they're dismissive, so he removes the mattress from the bottom bunk and places a desk in its place. That night, he awakens to find the invisible entity in his own bed with him. As he tries to slip out of the seemingly sleeping invisible creature's grasp, it suddenly wakes up and tries to grab him, clawing away relentlessly. Fighting back, he manages to escape and runs into his parents' room. Soon after, he convinces his parents to swap rooms with him. That's when, immediately after, his parents decide that it's time to move out.
Wow. Wow. What did you think of that?
It was okay. The bedtime story wasn't that good.
The first, but what about the Mickey Mouse one? What about the Mickey Mouse one?
I mean, I want to watch the video, but I don't want to at the same time.
And how come you only watched the first one?
What?
And how come we only watched the first one?
I watched both of them.
Well, never mind then. Well, that's going to be it for the video, you guys. And if you really enjoyed it, and if you really want me to react to all of the top 10 creepypastas, and go on ahead, like, subscribe, comment down, and I'll do it. GatorGamer CHOMPING OUT. Goodbye once again.